covering it. It's a summit that's going to take place for the next 4 days.
Thank you, America First! Thank you, Stop the Steal!
With my sister Elizabeth Etzinson, we are at the turning point.
Shlama shalom and salam to one and all. We hope that everyone's doing well. We greet you weekly, as you well know, with these 3 Semitic words that all mean peace in the Semitic language, of course, in Assyrian, in Hebrew or Jewish language, and in Arabic. And so, unfortunately, I wish that we could our words would be true, but we are far from peace today. And it is with a broken heart that we actually start our program today, knowing that the world is on fire in many different directions, in many different places. But more specifically, more recently, of course, the Israeli and Gaza Strip war that broke out about 5 or 6 days ago. Before we go on and start the program, actually, if we can ask you to support our grassroots independent program that we come to you as we can every week, but then again, as needed throughout the week. It's an independent program. By following us, please subscribing, sharing, and of course, watching. So if you don't mind inviting your friends today, sharing our program, following us on Rumble, subscriptions on everywhere is Mona K's show. You see it on the screen right there. So if you'd like to point your camera at it and give us a follow, please, and give us a shout out. Now, the 3 nations closely related throughout the what we call the Abrahamic seed, that have the Abrahamic seed, of course, of the faith, the religious faith. The Jewish, Muslim, and Christians today stand far more divided today than at any time in history. It is a very sad situation that with the latest being, of course, with the escalation of the decades-long Israeli-Palestinian conflict that has now resulted in one of the bloodiest massacres, causing death, destruction, displacement, and mass humanitarian crisis against thousands of Israelis and Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. As the world watched, and as many of you watched, we all watched together. We woke up in the morning. A war had broken out 5 or 6 days ago, straight out of Hamas. An attack had taken place where the Hamas terrorist group had surprisingly attacked Israel. Programming note about what's going on also for tomorrow. We're going to have a live broadcast with Dr. Yaakov Maoz from Israel. He is a Jewish Assyrian. Tomorrow at 8 p.m. again on Rumble and Facebook Live. He's going to give us a report of what's going on currently over there. But Dr. Yaakov actually comes from, or a descendant of the families that were banished, Jewish families that were banished from north of Iraq some 50, 60 years ago, but they have not forgotten their language. So we're going to be talking about a lot of things, including the connection between the Assyrians and the Jewish people, with, of course, bringing us together with that Aramaic language. So he does know himself as as a Jewish Assyrian. Now, here's how we want to start the program before we introduce. He's not a guest, of course. He's a brother to the program. Lieutenant Colonel Sargis Sangari. Sargis Sangari is with us once again, Lieutenant, and I'm going to give him a proper introduction. But I want to say before I bring him on that once again, the innocent people in the Middle East, another part of the Middle East, are paying for the sins of the evil works of the terrorist extremists that have changed and destroyed all that has been accomplished, of course. And we all know Hamas, ISIS, Hezbollah, and the head of the serpent, of course, being Iran. And all terrorist groups have no value for human life, not even the lives of their own people. They infiltrate societies by force, fear, and intimidation to gain control, to wage war on the backs of the innocent civilians who are strategically placed in harm's way. The life of a terrorist is committed to causing chaos and destruction, to progress their evil agenda, to cause death and demise. They survive on conflict while the population suffer the consequences. The images of pain and death and chaos are not of the terrorist, but of ordinary innocent people, children, parents, mothers, fathers, like you and me, wondering why this is happening to them. We must have compassion. We cannot allow this tragedy or this chaos or this war change who we are. We must continue to have compassion on the innocent people who have no control over what is happening as they suffer in a perpetual victimhood of their respective dictatorship, weak governments, or governments that cannot protect them. The horrific massacre by Hamas forces to kill many innocent people on the Israeli side resulted in the genuine Palestinians losing the compassion and support of the world. All Palestinians right now are being seen as such. No one can deny what their own eyes have seen as they all stand today with Israel and have stopped their aid to Palestine. Hamas brought this on the population that they supposedly are representing. They brought this on, this calamity that people were praying and hoping there would be a peaceful resolution. Therefore, this war is not about the Palestinian people. It's not against the Palestinian people, but a war against extremism, terrorism, who are evil personified. This is against Hamas, ISIS, Hezbollah, and any other terrorist group, including Iran, whom, as I said, is the head of the snake. Our co-host is our brother, Lieutenant Sargis Sangari, who will help us make sense of this madness and to unpack all that has happened in the last 5 or 6 days since Hamas' surprise attack on Israel. Welcome to the program, brother. It's always great to have you because we learn so much from you and your perspective.
Yeah, it's good to be here, Mona, and I hope what we discussed today is a little bit helpful, especially for our community that is in both Iraq, Iran, and Syria, and as you said, even in Israel and Lebanon. So
Yeah.
our community is going to be directly impacted, and hopefully what we discussed today kind of give them a little bit of a guidelines as to, when it comes for them to make decisions as to which way they want to head and the new changing world order that's taking place now within the region.
Sad but true. Colonel Sangari is a retired U.S. Army colonel and CEO of the Near East Center for Strategic Engagement. He is also a founder of the United Assyrian Appeal, and I believe that we have the QR codes if those that want to get involved or want to know more about the programs and the nonprofit organizations and the work that Colonel Sangari does. So we would love for you to get in touch. He has his own program, of course, that many of you know, the New Paradigm, and he is one of the busiest people that I know, that we know. We are so honored and appreciative that he has agreed to join us today because we seek his expertise today and knowledge from a military and geopolitical perspective. So if you have any questions, I don't want to say the lines are open, but we are on a live feed. So if you have any questions, I'm going to do my best. I've got my Facebook Live. It's simultaneously being broadcast on both the Facebook and the Rumble. I've got my iPad and my phone open, so I'm going to be looking left and right to try to see if there are any questions. And of course, This program always is made possible by Cinnamon Production, the wonderful, capable hands of Mr. Frederick Newman. And if there seems to be anything that we're missing, of course, he'll let us know. Both Lieutenant Colonel Sangari and I are, as you said, born in the Middle East, and will share our perspectives and thoughts with, of course, I think that Colonel Sangari's perspective is a lot more superior. Of course, as Assyrians born in Iraq, the attack of this current attack of Hamas reminds us of ISIS when it came down to when they attacked Mosul in the Nineveh Plains. It comes to mind, of course, where you, Colonel, I know did many. I don't know how many tours you did in Iraq, but you served the United States Army. You were born in Iran, but you served the American Army and fought bravely for the Americans and the freedom that we share here. Nineveh, of course, was a capital city of the Assyrian Empire and one of the major hubs of Christians in Iraq, when it was also attacked and taken over by the evil terrorists that wreaked havoc on the nation, as Hamas is doing right now. As we all woke up to the horrible, unbelievable news, as we watched in horror Hamas group of terrorists that control Gaza attack Israel, killing thousands of innocent civilians. Hamas has long been designated as a terrorist group, but they're in government. They supposedly were voted into the area known as the Gaza Strip, and they are governing. So a terrorist group also as a governor. Of course, they are continue their barrage of brutal massacre, kidnapping, and recording them, by the way, and showcasing them on social media. We have a short clip that we'd like to show before we start to speak to Colonel Sangari. But let's go ahead and go ahead and look at evil personified in the face.
Frequency instruments, bass, drums, distortion, artifacts.
In the morning, Hamas started with a big rocket attack on Israel, and from what seemed like a usual attack from Gaza, became every citizen's worst nightmare. At 7:35, terrorist units invaded the territories of Israel, driving cars and motorcycles. They started driving in cities in Israel, shooting and murdering every civilian they passed by, breaking into civilian homes, taking hostages, and murdering families, including men, women, babies, and elder civilians. While they were taking hostages and killing civilians, some of their units drove to a party, started shooting everyone they saw. Parents are still looking for their missing children, not knowing what happened to them. And unfortunately, it gets worse. The terror units of Hamas controlled the cities for more than 12 hours, filming and distributing some of their horrible actions when they conquered some of the cities surrounding Gaza. They broke into civilian homes, and those that they couldn't break into were burned, forcing the civilians to get outside and be slaughtered by Hamas cruel terror units. And no, this is not a horror movie. This is the reality right now in Israel. The terror units of Hamas call themselves the Freedom Warriors. There are hundreds of videos showing them celebrating around citizens' dead bodies, including elder women and kids. If you support Hamas, you support terror.
And that is exactly what's going on right now. Colonel Sangari, we watched in horror, as we said, but how did this happen after 6 days, in the last 6 days of war? Has there been any more answers as to how this happened to Israel? How did this get past the Iron Dome, the defensive system developed by Israel, designed to intercept and destroy short-range rockets? And they were so prepared. I mean, when you talk about the Iron Dome, you think that they're impenetrable. How did this happen?
Well, look, the short answer is from a military perspective, it was what we call unconventional warfare, right? UW. So it was an unconventional warfare UW attack, asymmetric attack against Israel. And I was on Newsmax yesterday, and they asked me, and the last time we saw something at this level was in World War II, where you had a smaller force structure conducting this type of an attack from land, sea, and air. Now, regardless, um, as I was in the military and I would study historical battles, this is going to be one of those attacks that's going to be studied for a long time, probably even in the U.S. military academies. It is not that difficult to conduct these type of attacks or plan them. As the Hamas have already said themselves, there are only 5 people within Hamas knew it. Even the Iranians are saying we had no clue about it, even though the Iranian Quds Force had trained them. And that's how you're supposed to do a successful attack, a unconventional warfare attack. Mona, when we were fighting against ISIS, the Syrian army, our guys were fighting in both Syria and Iraq.
Hmm.
We didn't talk to anybody. We did things through couriers. Not everybody was fit on the plan. We spoke in Aramaic. If we did anything in Aramaic, we took letters. We assigned numbers to those letters. We used code words in Aramaic. We switched it around. Not everybody was bought into understanding what language codes you're using.
Hmm.
What code you're using this week as what code you're using next week. And we kept it as quiet as possible, and not everybody knew what their target objectives were. And then when we had to conduct the operation, we basically gave the word and the operation was conducted. So Quds Force, even by U.S. Army standards, is one of the best force structures that is out there. And this Quds Force for Iran when it comes to conducting unconventional warfare. They've just taken it out of the U.S. doctrine and all the other countries' doctrine. And what happened here was an execution of an unconventional warfare asymmetric operation attack against the state of Israel. Now, there's other issues that have taken place, and one of the problems is for you to counter this type of a force structure, you have to have significant human capabilities within those forces. That means you have to embed into these networks that Hamas has in this case or others have in order for you to discover it. But a lot of the times, the individuals that embed in these networks end up getting killed. They get discovered and they get killed. It is very hard to embed. And sometimes nation states put restrictions on their military capabilities as to how far and in what capacity they could penetrate these type of networks. So it has happened before. United States, a couple of guys with box cutters using aircrafts were able to basically, attack the United States, take down the Twin Towers, attack the Pentagon. So these things are capable. Now, keep in mind, in these type of fights, the smaller force structure and conventional warfare doesn't have to win the fight. All they have to do is make sure that they don't lose the fight in the long run. So that's how it gets an advantage when it comes to what the final outcome of a battle or a war or a campaign will be. Now, the kidnapping piece is also part of
Hmm.
UW. You're taught to kidnap but hold for ransoms. You don't teach in UW to just kill random people. That comes sometimes when it happens in guerrilla warfare, but it is not something that is taught. But when you add the terror element into it, and then of course you see what you see. Keep in mind, we know that some of the battle armor that the Israelis had and some of the hits that they've taken, analyzing those pictures, the only type of weapon systems that could do something like that is a weapon system equivalent to a javelin or other systems that are close to what a javelin system is. And it is possible that some of the weapon systems that were initially given to the Ukrainians may have been taken off the battlefield in fights, lost, and ended up coming back in and making their way into this particular arena and have been used in these attacks. The other piece is also, as you were mentioning, there's a lot of sophisticated capabilities that the Israelis have when it comes to just the fact that they have penetrating ground radars and weapon systems that can operate on their own. If the soldier has been disabled or killed or neutralized, however, there's an indication that those systems could have taken a hit. Now, could that have been a cyber hit? And could that cyber hit been coordinated with this particular unconventional warfare attack. And the nations that can do those would be large nations like the United States, UK, Russia, China. Iran has some of those capabilities. So India, anything is possible in this fight. But for now, Israel has now cleared at least the Israeli territories and is now has been forced to have to go into Gaza in order to be able to clear out the rest of the force structures that might still be there. Because, of course, after the decision has been made by the Israeli leadership that they have to completely destroy this particular force that is in Gaza itself.
Okay. It seems like it was a lot more sophisticated attack than it was in the past. And as the report was saying, it was a usual attack from Gaza. They're so used to these usual attacks from Gaza, and yet there is reports, and I'm not sure if you've heard of it, but that Egypt might have had some kind of intel that they warned Israel that Gaza was in fact, or Hamas was intending to attack. Do you think Israel underestimate the capacity of this new capacity of their attack when they came in at the surprise rate that they did and the impact that they made? Did they underestimate Hamas?
It is not so much as far as an underestimation. Look, every nation uh, that wants to fight another nation does planning. They have, I mean, the other side has a brain to it, knows how it wants to attack you. It looks at your defenses and plans for it. Again, when it comes though to unconventional warfare, as I stated, the last time there was such a successful attack was in World War II on this scale of an unconventional hit. It can be done. It has been done in the past. Can it be complacency? Could it be because they hit them just at the right time? Could it be that they had support from larger powers with cyber attacks prior to an attack like this taking place? Everything's possible. Could it be that Israel just lacked the human intel inside of those networks to know? Keep in mind, remember when I think we talked last, it was just a couple of months ago that I said a possible attack from the Israelis against Hezbollah is imminent. And the reason we talked about that just 2 months ago when I was here on the show, if I remember, I talked about it was because the Israelis knew something is coming. Just because you know it's coming, it doesn't mean that you know where it's coming. Look, there's just so much signal intelligence gathering capabilities that you have and the human gathering capabilities you have. And again, if only 5 people know it and nobody's talked to anybody else, nobody can put the pattern to see when the attack's coming, how it's coming. It's not the
Yeah.
first time that a large nation like Israel has taken a hit like this, or the United States in 9/11. But look, Britain has been hit in massive attacks. France has been hit in massive attack. We kind of knew France was going to be hit. I remember when initially prior to France being hit, I was in Peru, and that's where we were able to pick up the intelligence. I could talk about it now because it's been so many years past, and I came back and I actually provided information for our local law enforcement here to put it into the systems that law enforcement picks up. So even though if law enforcement picks it up and goes, okay, an attack is coming and this attack is coming, nobody knows where the attack's going to be because those networks and cells, once they're activated, nobody knows who is part of those cells when they're going to be activated. But once they're activated, they could cause a lot of damage. I mean, it was within an hour that from the breach point, that these individuals were able to spread and hit pretty much all the major cities. Now, the Navy did its job in Israel. Not one person was able to come through. They knocked out all the targets. They didn't lose anybody. On the Army side, it was a different story. Breach points were hit, and the areas where the civilians were killed, the areas where the civilians were armed, they were able to protect themselves. Areas that civilians were not armed, they ended up suffering a lot of casualties. So it is what it is. Now we're at war. As Netanyahu has said, that is a war against Hamas. And again, it goes back to the definition, right, of how you're looking at it. If Hamas itself is a force structure that belongs to a governmental structure that was elected by the Palestinian people in the Gaza, then that force structure is nothing more than an army of a nation. Now, if you say there's a two-state solution, and you're going to say that Palestinians have a state and Gaza is part of that state, so then that means here's one nation conducting an attack against another nation. Now you're at war. And the issue here is, as Israel is not committed to an urban fight, which I know they don't want to be involved in because their focus was on Hezbollah, Israel by itself doesn't have enough aircrafts, platforms in their military to be able to knock out every single Hezbollah target. Keep in mind, today, as our Secretary of State was in Israel, the Foreign Secretary for Iran was in Lebanon. So as we're trying to develop our strategy with an ally in the region, in this case, the United States, he's also there protecting his assets for his for Iran's strategic wants and desires by meeting with the Hezbollah leadership. And if Hezbollah decides to attack from Lebanon fully with all the missiles that they have, and now you have Israel committed to a ground battle, which is going to be very bloody, very costly inside of Gaza, and the United States doesn't come to a full support with that naval task force that the United States has, it's going to be very difficult for Israel to be able to withstand anything that might be launched against Jerusalem anytime short. So, unfortunately, the world is starting slowly and slowly move to a point of no return. And this point of no return we're talking about has to do with the possibility of where it can even escalate, just like the European war, into a nuclear war. And we don't want to be there, but that's the reality of where we're heading today.
Yeah, exactly. And as you were saying earlier, that other great countries, larger countries, more sophisticated countries have suffered that. And I have a report here from Reuters where it says Israel calls last week's devastating attack by Hamas its 9/11 moment. The secretive mastermind behind the assault, Palestinian militant Mohammed Deif, calls it Al-Aqsa flood. So you're absolutely right. And we have a short report to get Prime Minister Netanyahu's reaction. Let's go ahead and watch this video and come back and talk on the other side.
We are at war, not an operation, not rounds, but at war. This morning, Hamas opened a murderous surprise attack against the state of Israel and its citizens. We're in it since early morning. I convened heads of security. I instructed first to clear the villages from terrorists that infiltrated. This is taking place now. In addition, I ordered a wide call for reservists to fight back with might and scope that the enemy did not know. The enemy will pay a price he did not know until now. In the meantime, I call on all citizens of Israel to strictly obey the instructions of the army and the instructions of the Home Command. We are in a war, and we will win it.
We are in a war, and that was, of course, confirmed, and the casualties keep increasing. You know, as we said, you and I are born in the Middle East, and you have a military perspective. I have more of a personal perspective based on what we have, of course, based on our past experience. This disaster, or this destruction, I should say, as far as I'm concerned, this is straight from the book of one that we've known, or the world later know, the Butcher of Baghdad, that learned it from those who were known to divide and conquer, of course, those who came before him. This is not about religion, and I feel compassion, and that's why I started the program by saying we need to feel compassion for both sides, for the world, because every peace-loving humanitarian human being really wants to get along with their neighbors, raise their kids, be merry, and live a peaceful life. The terrorists, those in power or in the streets, don't have a religion, just like the experiences we've had with our dictators. They use religion to emotionally control the population who have faith and believe in God Almighty and put fear of God in them. They want to make this into a holy war of hate because they want the people to have compassion, don't have compassion on one another, don't want neighbors to be brothers, or don't feel for one another. Therefore, this apartheid that they are claiming against Israel, they are guilty of themselves. This discrimination that they are talking about. They don't want the Muslims to have community or commonality with anyone. They don't want to grow a community of peace. All they want is death and destruction, that they may prosper on the backs of the innocent. Because humanitarian crisis right now in Gaza is being created. Of course, in Israel, it's much more organized. It's much more prepared to. I mean, no one is prepared for that number of deaths. Well, I think it's up to the number of about 1,200 that were butchered on the streets or butchered in their homes. Children being decapitated. I mean, it's just horrible. And we don't want to show you any of those videos, obviously, that are out there because you've already seen them. The terrorists are enjoying, Colonel, they're enjoying themselves in Qatar. They're enjoying themselves in European countries. They got their families all out before this attack is going on. What do we say for a government that does that in the side of the Palestinian? Now, I know what Israel is going through, but what is Palestinian going through right now? What is Palestine going through? What is Gaza going through right now?
Well, Gaza is going to be hit multiple times. The various different targets. Keep in mind, as you saw what Prime Minister Netanyahu said, that this is war. So war, you have to go in and you have to clear it out. And if they're going to go in and clear out and he wants to destroy the enemy, when you say neutralizes a certain number, you get rid of. But this time, if he's going in to destroy the enemy, he's going to have to divide the entire area into different zones. He has to go in and clear out those zones. You got underground tunnels. He has hostage issues that he has to deal with right now. My own daughter here had a young lady that she knew in her biology class in the junior year, and that young lady is, missing, captive with her mom in Israel. So, most likely, from everything we're getting from the reports, is not too many of these hostages are gonna, are gonna make it through. If the fighting is brutal. Hey, but keep in mind again, I will say this again: the Palestinians in Gaza voted this government in. They got rid of the Palestinian Authority and told them, "You need to leave. You're not,
But
what we're
really,
looking
based
for."
on what we know, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Colonel, but based on what we knew, or based on what we know from dictatorships or governments that put fear of God or fear and intimidation in the hearts of citizens, did they really vote them in, or did they force themselves
Well,
in?
yeah, they voted them
And
in. It does,
yeah,
Mona, I hear what you're saying, but they voted them in. Look, the French rose up against their government. The British rose up against their government. The Russians rose up against the Tsar. Even the Chinese rose up, against their Chinese Communist Party. The Americans revolted against the strongest nation in the world. And nations across the world, if they don't like their government, do rise up. Even now, as the Hamas has brought the full might of the Israeli military in, that is absolutely going after them everywhere. If the people, the Palestinian people, are not turning on on these individuals, then I mean, there's not much you could do. I mean, either you are for the government or you're not for that government. And if you're for that government and you're give them homes, you give them water, you give them food, you give them your money, you give them your sons and daughters, then, I mean, there's not much somebody can do. The Nazis and the Germans, the Nazi system itself was very brutal, but the Germans supported it. The doctors supported it. The train workers supported it. The police supported it. The military fought for it. We're not at the World War II stages anymore, where because of that, Eisenhower basically said, just go ahead and level Dresden, and level all the locations possible. And he stated it because he said, if they're going to support this government, then we're going to just kill them all. And then what did we do with Japan? We dropped 2 nuclear bombs on top of Japan because they were supporting the emperor and that governmental system. So I don't think you're at a stage you're going to see something like that. But nations in the past have to either make a decision. Are you going to support this particular governmental structure? And if you do, and you know the outcome's not going to be beneficial to you, you have to make a decision of either you're going to stick with this government or not. The Iraqi people eventually, in the process, when the Americans invaded, turned on their government. As a matter of whether or not the Palestinians are going to turn against the Hamas government and support this force that is coming in that Israel now has to commit, or they're not. Again, keep in mind, even with the rules of law and land warfare, if you are fighting and you are not a uniformed individual, the officer on the ground, if you're captured, can conduct a court martial. And in World War II, if he caught individuals that were outside of uniform that were conducting operations against us, based on what has been agreed upon under by the United Nations, nations of the world, and in the League of Nations, guess what? They put you against the wall and execute you. But today, politics have changed. When Bush was capturing individuals who should have been executed on the ground and was flying them over here and putting them in Guantanamo, it caused such a issue because it went completely against what were the norms of what was agreed upon. So today is a little bit of a different atmosphere. It's going to be a bloody fight. A lot of people are going to die. A lot of individuals are going to be displaced. But if you're going to clear that area, you're going to have to clear it in a very brutal, progressive way. And either the individuals that are not for Hamas are going to turn on them, or if they're going to support them, then they become, unfortunately, combatants in this particular arena and operation. And if that happens, then you end up being killed on the battlefield. Nobody wins in this war, just so you know.
Yeah.
The
Exactly.
second this war was started, both sides lost. Now, I said at the beginning, if you're an insurgency, you don't have to win it. You just don't have to lose it. The issue is both Israel and the Palestinians will end up losing in this fight to the benefit of neither of them.
Okay. And of course, we were just reporting a few weeks ago on the enclave of the Nagorno-Karabakh, the Armenian and Azerbaijan, of course, having to completely shut Karabakh out, where they were not providing any food, any shelter, any water, any basically starving them. And we were all aghast. Of course, in Gaza. Of course, the Palestinian people right now are facing immediate sanctions from all over the Western world, and some even Arab countries that are right now standing with Israel in defending the right to exist, obviously. So tell me about the strategy, Colonel, from the war or military perspective. Israel has halted all utility services, water, electricity, gas. There is nowhere to run for the people of Gaza, who have been there for days without food, water, internet, gas, electricity, medical care. Egypt, the only other country that's closer by, has closed its border. It's refusing to take them. I don't know if they were able to even send any aid. I know that Netanyahu said, I will bomb any trucks that come through. Tell me what the strategy of knowing that there are innocent people, yet we are talking about innocent people. I know that this is a government, Hamas was a government that was voted in, but tell me the strategy. It just sounds so brutal to the people that are watching from afar, going, that's not very compassionate. And of course, you just said war is brutal.
Mona, the Arab-speaking people that are in Gaza that call themselves Palestinian, going back to even prior to Israel really being established in a strong foothold in its in its territories now, we're not really supported by the Arab nations, although the Arab countries got together to include Egypt, Syria, Jordan, and there was a major attack against the Israel at that time, which was able to repel those attacks. The individuals that were pushed out from those territories that had been because of the fighting that took place that ended up in Jordan, ended up in Egypt. Egyptians and Jordanians didn't want them. And they said, if you're going to stay here and you're going to be inside of our territory, you're not allowed to even have a weapon in your hand. The only place they
Wow.
pushed them really to that they said you could go and have a weapon was in Lebanon, and it led to the civil war. Even today, Egypt doesn't want the Palestinians to be in this territory because it doesn't want them to be destabilizing factor inside of their country. That's just a reality. The Arab nations haven't figured out how to deal with this issue. The reason Abraham's Accord became such a positive for the Arab nations because it gave them an opportunity to look at the economic transformation of what is a new world order that is shaping up. And it finally was able to cut this whole Palestinian issue off the table as it negotiated with the state of Israel. Keep in mind, Anwar Sadat himself made an unexpected trip to Israel because he saw what the future of Egypt was going to be. And he said, if I don't make a peace with Israel, I'm not going to be in a position where Egypt is going to be able to survive. What was his gift? His own people, Islamists, executed him. And look where Egypt is today. He gave his life to make sure Egypt is in a position where it's respected in the Arab world, a voice for the various Arab nations throughout all of Africa and throughout the Middle East. The issue is, what are you going to do with the individuals that sit whether in Gaza or sit in the West Bank? Are these individuals that are there willing to be able to manage, govern their own territories without always wanting to go to war with the state of Israel? And as you know, the government of Gaza, Hamas, their military force structure decided, well, we're going to attack. So you're going to attack a sovereign nation, then guess what happens? That is recognized by the world, and you're not recognized even. Question needs to be asked by the Palestinians. Why is it that the Arab nations really haven't pushed for your recognition into the UN as a state within that larger state? And if you're going to conduct that, then yes, the other sovereign state has a right to attack you back. Now, again, I don't think anybody wins in this process because in a short period of time, you're going to see, the tide turn on the political side against the Israelis, possibly because you can see the protests that are taking place. In the past, maybe out of every 100 Americans, they did a new poll, at least 68% would be on the Israeli side. And now today, they've done a quick snap poll, and only 38% of Americans are supporting Israel. And the question has to be asked, why? Why does that even happen? Why does it exist? So, look, this war will expand. Our worry is, as we're putting a naval task force close to Israel, guess what else is there? The Russians are flying around everywhere. The Chinese are in Syria. You have to clear corridors to hit targets. The Iranians want to have a say. The Turks want to have a say, which will have a big, huge effect on what happens to our people. In the past, Mona, there was a East and a West. Everybody knew the East was Russia and the West was the United States. We knew that there was a Sykes-Picot contract that was going to run out. It was literally a contract for the Middle East that carved out most of these countries. Palestine was named by the British mandate. The British called it Palestine in their mandate. There was nothing that referred to it like that. There were Philistines that fought against the Jews going back years, but that doesn't mean that the people that are today sitting in Gaza are anywhere related to the Philistine that was fighting the Jews. The name of the territory was given by the British mandate. In our own culture, in our own Assyrian community, the Roman Catholic Church designated a group of Assyrian Christians that converted to Catholicism as Chaldeans. Today, that Chaldean designation by the Roman Catholic Church has now become a ethnicity. They refer to themselves as ethnicity. They think themselves to be completely a different people, even though the person who named them was a Roman Catholic Church, because they just converted to Catholicism. And I am an Assyrian Catholic. But in Iraq, Saddam used that as a means to divide and be able to conquer. Today, you go anywhere and you talk to somebody up in Detroit, they'll say, "No, I'm a different ethnicity. I am not this." You speak the same language, you eat the same food, you come from the same villages of the north. How are you a different ethnicity suddenly? So you have to understand what happens in the political arenas, why these particular divisions took place, who named these individuals, how was it established. This change that is taking in the world 25 years before the Sykes-Picot Agreement was going to run out, countries started looking at a new Middle East. And then China comes into the equation. And what does China do? Wang Yi in 2012 at Brookings Institute proposes the new power relations model. I have actually written about that going back in 2015. He gives his vision as to what China and the United States need to look like when it comes to global powers. And in the vision, he proposes that everybody was going to use the Middle East for their benefits, that they see fit of what they might want from the Middle East.
Yeah.
Europe was going to be either controlled by Russia, a larger Russia, or the European Union. And then Africa was going to be a place where everybody would compete for the resources for future technologies. Now, Susan Rice took onto stage in George Washington University, and instead of countering it, she thought about how can we actually actualize it. Those are the words she used. And today's Biden administration, going back to the Obama administration, has the same viewpoint. So this is a new world order shaping. Take a look at how it's affected even the Kurds in northern Iraq. Before the
Mm-hmm.
2017 referendum, the Kurds were flying high. People would come in, go to Iraq, diplomats would meet in Baghdad, then they would fly to the Kurdish regional government in the north and meet with the Kurdish leadership. Since the referendum, that the world nations told the Kurds, don't hold, it's going to cost you.
Mm-hmm.
The Kurds have lost 51% of the territory that they had. There, it's gone. And today, Turkey has 22 bases in northern Iraq. And Iran, as of last month, in the 15th, made an agreement with the Iraqi government and said, here's what's going to happen here. If you do not get rid of the Kurds that are doing cross-border incursions and fighting against us, we're going to come in here with our military force structures and take everything over. You have to deal with these individuals. And just yesterday, the UN envoy, special envoy, basically said, yes, Iraq and Iran, you have the right to deal with these individuals. And Turkey now is basically moving force structures more into the region and into the north. There's a new world order being shaped based on agreements of the various different nations in the world. And I will tell you, when you have Saudi Arabia wanting to be part of the Abraham Accords, when you have other nations signing on the Abraham Accord, when you got Sudan, who's in flames right now, wanting to be part of the Abraham's Accord, nobody wants to deal with a governmental structure that is sitting somewhere in Gaza Strip or sitting somewhere up in the
Yeah.
West Bank that constantly wants to work off of the old orders. It's not going to fit. Even in our country today, the two-party system's not working well. We
Mm-hmm.
are not happy with it. You just had Kennedy. I'm going to run as an independent. That's what his decision was.
Yes.
Because even him coming from the family that the Democrats are associated with says the system's not working. There's a new shaping of these systems, and unfortunately, the people that are on the ground, and I would say the leadership of Hamas, hasn't thought about that because they've been so focused on one issue that we want to attack and possibly destroy the state of Israel. And again, it will not benefit anyone for the war that is taking place there. Palestinians are dying,
Absolutely.
Israelis have died, and this will continue to degrade everybody's ability in that region. And
Yeah.
eventually, the nations of the world, to include the Arab nations, are going to say, we cannot operate this way. You're going to have to either sit in your little piece of dirt that you have and raise your families and make business and make money and educate them and live happy. There's plenty of places on this planet for you to live on. The largest group of Armenians are outside of Armenia, not in Armenia. They have 9 billionaires, okay, that exist in the Armenian community. In 2023 Forbes magazine, there's plenty of Kurds that are outside of Kurdish regional government, and they're making money and they're living well. You have Chinese that are now living even in Basra, and they're living in northern Iraq. The global world has plenty of space for everybody. The question has to be whether or not the Palestinian people in the region are willing to work and live with what the Israelis have already established for themselves within the region. And if they decide to do that, God bless. If not, there's going to be
Yeah.
continuous war in the region.
This continuous emotional drive of hate, you must hate at all cost unto death, and to watch their children, to watch this hatred that is driving this war, that is being almost not allowed to end. And, it's just unreal. Now, as far as what you're watching right now on the side over there, Fred has it's a live feed, by the way, from Jerusalem, correct? Fred, is that what that is? It's a live feed from Jerusalem. We're watching. We don't see anything going on right now, but that is a live feed on the side. So if anything goes on or if anything happens,
I
you're
think
watching
that's
it.
you're looking at Gaza. You're looking at areas of Gaza right there. Um,
Pretty
you know,
seems to be a little bit quiet at this time.
Mona, look, the war will expand and become more
Yeah.
regional. Again, if Hezbollah launches all those missiles, Israel's not going to be able to withstand all those missile launches. The only one who could help would be United States, but that means that the U.S. would have to hit those targets. Now, imagine you have a young lieutenant flying up there. You have to clear a corridor. He's got split seconds, and then suddenly a Turkish drone comes into play or a Russian MiG, and then weapon locks on, and now you have a much bigger war than you were expecting. This can get out of control. And for
Yeah.
people who think that, well, Israel wants to take out Iran and knock out Iran, as I've talked to the Israelis before, if Israel decides tomorrow to pop a tactical nuke on Tehran and just wipe it out, and maybe Iran has a nuclear bomb, nobody's ever thought about that, and dumps the nuclear bomb where it believes Iran has a nuclear bomb, it doesn't. It's not a victory for Israel. Israel knows that. Why isn't it a victory? First, you're destroying the planet. Secondly, even if you do that, 75 years from now, there's going to be a place called Iran. Just like there's a place now called Japan, even though we dropped 2 nuclear bombs on it. Iran will survive. But 2,000 years from now, because how technology is becoming smaller and you can have one Hamas operator to be able to knock out an entire Israeli tank because of weapons that may have come into his hands, a
Mhm.
technology that is now advanced, you could have a dirty bomb and somebody opens it up somewhere close to ports in Israel, and it's game over. Jerusalem is
Mhm.
done, and all three religions lose. It doesn't solve anything. So Israel understands that, but we're at a point where we're now possibly pushing the world into this major conflict. And this major
Mhm.
conflict, both in Europe, Russia has in their doctrine to pop off these so-called, tactical nukes. And when we talk tactical nuke can destroy the entire planet's atmosphere. And we're talking about now possibility of Israel being in a point where if they're on the brinks of extinction, there you go. Where are the Palestinians going to live? In a place that
Mhm.
for 2,000 years is just filled with radiation. I mean, these are the things that the old system didn't think about, but the new system is looking at, is focused on, because they're realizing until these issues are settled, until you're able to wipe out individuals who just have this old ideology that of fighting, killing, taking territory, you're never going to be able to get to a point where you can understand that as the world is advancing, technology is advancing, various different nations are becoming stronger and wanting to say that I'm a regional player, you're not going to see any changes. And what happens for the smaller groups, even the Kurds, as not numerous as they are, 51% of their territory is gone because they didn't understand how to manage things, and they were much closer to the West in the thinking and ideology than the Palestinians authority might be, or the Palestinian elected leadership of Hamas is. And even they are now at a brink where the world nations are saying we cannot operate in the future with the type of attitude that you have and how you want to work within the world polities of nations. The Kurds
Okay.
never represented anybody who was a minority. Really, they didn't fight for the minority rights of anyone. Um, Look where the Assyrians are. Look where the Shabak are under their control. Look where the Yazidis are. Look where the
Yeah.
Turkmen are. So if they couldn't represent them and they lost that territory, what do you think is going to happen to a Hamas governmental structure
Yeah.
that basically isn't even possibly representing the wants and desires of the Palestinians in the Western
Of their
Bank
own people.
and
Yeah.
Gaza?
Yeah, of their own people. I want to talk a little about the casualties. I know that there have been many, as many of you already know this. Of course, we always say on this program, we're not doing any breaking news. Everybody's heard. There's been at least 1,200 casualties on the Israeli side. I think 700 killed in retaliation, of course, attacks in Gaza by Israeli forces so far. Many of the foreigners who were killed and still missing were attending an electronic music festival, as we showed you in the beginning when you saw the band and the people that they forced them out by burning the building because they wanted to stay inside. They burned the building, and then the people were forced to flee, as you saw them, and then they just massacred them. They just executed them at will. And at least 22 U.S. citizens have died in Israel. A State Department spokesperson said Wednesday. Separately, U.S. President Joe Biden also confirmed that there are Americans among the hostages also, which is so scary. Now, I want to read from an Al Jazeera article about how many other people are actually missing, citizens from other countries. Argentina has 7 dead, 15 missing. Austria, 3 missing. Brazil, 3 missing. Cambodia, 1 dead. Canada, 1 dead, 3 missing. Chile, 2 missing. I mean, this is involving Colombia, 2 missing. France, 2 dead, 14 missing. Germany, several hostages. I mean, it's just Mexico, 2 hostages. Nepal, 10 dead, 1 missing. I want to do justice to all of these countries. Panama, 1 missing. Paraguay, 2 missing. Peru, 2 missing. Philippines, 7 missing. And then on Russia, 1 dead, 4 missing. Tanzania, 2 missing. Thailand, 18 dead, 11
Yeah, yeah.
hostages. Ukraine, 2 dead. United Kingdom, 1 dead. United States, 11 dead, others missing. And of course, we mentioned earlier that there was a young man from an Assyrian descent, Jewish Assyrian, that actually Dr. Yaakov reported to us that was also during the early days, I think it was the first couple of days, that perished. He knew himself of, we're going to talk about him tomorrow. But pretty much with all that going on, as you can imagine, the whole world is standing behind Israel. There was a joint statement that came out on October the 9th, where it says, today the leaders of France, Germany, Italy, the United Kingdom, and the United States of America released the following statement following their call. Today, we, President Macron of France, and they mention all of their names, express our steadfast and united support to the United States to the state of Israel and our unequivocal condemnation of Hamas and its appalling acts of terrorism. So, as you can see, everyone, including 84 countries, foreign ministries said 84 countries have expressed support for Israel, which is a loss for the Palestinian people and their cause. And I keep going back to that, is because we need to understand that, of course, the people that caused it are the people that we're representing. And I do have a report here from citizens.com. Police department across the U.S. are raising security efforts tomorrow, Friday, October the 13th, which many of you know that on Tuesday, October the 10th, Khalid Mishael, the former leader of the political wing of Hamas, called for a worldwide protest in solidarity with the Palestinian people, known as the Al-Aqsa flood event. Here you go. That's the it was of course broadcast in Arabic, and many people were interpreting it. But according to the sources, the FBI and DHS have no specific and credible intelligence indicating a threat to the United States stemming from the Hamas attacks in Israel. However, they have issued a public safety alert for increased vigilance. According to ABC News, every major city police department in the U.S. is currently on a heightened state of alert. In New York City, the NYPD ordered all active members of service to report in uniform tomorrow. Expect a heightened police presence in your city. Stay vigilant and use caution. That is serious, truly. So be careful out there, and just watch your back and be alert. It is truly scary times for us. Like you said, we don't want to be caught. We don't want to be caught. And I know we have pictures of countries that.
Well, I keep in mind the same. If you're relying on the same security apparatus that just completely missed the ability of
That the
Hamas to
world
conduct
learned from, or use it as a great example.
unconventional war against them, you're going to expect these
Yeah.
individuals to protect you, especially when the southern border is open. I will be frank with you on the show. I've had friends on the southern border with the Department of Homeland Security. They've caught individuals that are tied to Hamas, but they had to let them go because the U.S. government said, and according to U.S. law requirements, you cannot detain them. So, I mean, just yesterday, I mentioned it on Newsmax. There's a photo of the person leading the rally in New York, and that individual, when you take his picture and you put him through the system process, is blood relations tie to Hamas leadership. So you just got an individual, a network, a government military force structure that conducted unconventional warfare attack against somebody, and one of their folks is actually leading the protests in New York City. So if you're relying on this intel apparatus that completely has failed and wasn't able to counter this so-called unconventional attack, in an asymmetric operation landscape, how can you trust that they're going to be able to stop any network that becomes operationalized in our country? So,
What is one to do? What is one to do? Tomorrow comes into effect. What is one to do?
Well, I brought my kids around today. I sat them all down, all three of them, except for the younger one. Tomorrow, my youngest doesn't have school. My two oldest, even though they're going to college, they don't have classes on Fridays. And the only one I had is my younger daughter. I made sure that she understands what's going on, and their phones are going to be on. They have means of protecting themselves, and I told them just for tomorrow, at least limit your traffic and movement. Don't be all the way in certain areas. My son wanted to go in downtown Chicago. I told him, you go there and something happens, they raise a bridge. The only other access to come all the way back to my location is you got to go all the way into Indiana, and you may have to stay there for a couple of days. So I've done coordination because my brain is geared that way. Now, if nothing may happen tomorrow, maybe something happens on a Saturday.
But we need to take it seriously.
Yeah, you have to take your own security seriously internally. We don't live in heaven. We live on planet Earth. On planet Earth,
Mm.
uh, ever since Cain killed Abel, the older brother basically bashed the younger brother's head in and killed him. We've been at war. So, and Assyrians, we've gone through how many genocides? Every 50 years. I
Mhm.
mean, you have to understand that there's a reality of what happens. There's neighborhoods that folks are not going to walk in Chicago here because they're probably going to get killed, and they don't want to walk into those neighborhoods. So
Yeah.
just be cognitive, be aware, at least let people know what's going on, that they at least are conscious of what might take place. And hopefully it doesn't happen in your school, it doesn't happen in your park, it doesn't happen in your background. As I told you, the neighborhoods in Israel where they had guns, they were able to fight back. The areas,
Yeah.
neighborhoods that didn't have guns, they suffered a lot of casualties.
I have to ask you a political question. I don't know if you saw the headlines, but uh, Representative Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib of Michigan, of course, the other one's from Minnesota, and Tlaib, of course, from Michigan, Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib, who is a Palestinian born in America, are condemned in the U.S. for saying what prominent Israelis are saying. And I'm going to read, and it took her about a couple of days before Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib said this. I grieve that Palestinian and Israeli lives lost yesterday, she says. Today and every day, she wrote, I am determined as ever to fight for just a future where everyone can live in peace without fear and with true freedom, equal rights, and human dignity. The path to that future must include lifting the blockade, ending the occupation, and dismantling the apartheid system that creates the suffocating, dehumanizing condition that can lead to resistance. Of course, Talib is of Palestinian descent. And for the first time, they are called what are they called? The squad. The squad. I think there's four of them. Corinne Jean Pierre, who is the press secretary of the administration, says House member comments on Israel are repugnant, and we've often said that there is an infiltration because, in most cases, those that want to do America harm are not able to defeat America on the battlefield because we've got strong warriors and people that are committed to fighting the wars, like yourself, sir, that you have served this country honorably. But because of that, they have been infiltrating our union, even from our chamber of Congress, chamber of government, and instigating, if not infiltrating, through propaganda. Now, here you have someone in the capacity of these two women that in fact, have the privilege, have this honor of serving in one of the most highest and most highest offices in the world, to the most powerful country in the world, and yet they can't seem to condemn an act of violence that was plainly seen coming from one side. This is not to say, this was not condemning the people. For example, and I use this as an example, when ISIS invaded Mosul, corrupt or not corrupt, whatever you think of what was happening in Iraq at the time, or if justice was being served, Saddam Hussein was toppled. Did the government actually represent the people? And there was many grievances of the Iraqi people that, as you said, they opposed the government. But when ISIS invaded Mosul, ISIS were of the background of Iraq, and yet when the government didn't have a problem, if not for just show and tell, for face value only, condemned ISIS and promised or vowed to find justice. Why is it so hard for an official voted in America like Tlaib, Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib, and Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, to condemn? And when their narrative has always been, of course, to accuse Israel. What do
Look,
you think is going
politicians will say whatever a politician needs to say to stay in power. I mean, they go in broke and they come out multimillionaires. So, in this particular case, though, it has to be understood. That strip called Gaza, Israelis were there. There were Israeli settlers there. There were Israeli businesses there. There were hydroponic plants there. All that was there. When the Israelis couldn't come to an understanding or agreement with the Palestinian leadership, the Israelis basically said, you know what the hell, you can have it. They got up and left. Now, when they turned over the hydroponic plants that were there, that were making $1 million a month through networks of sending foods to other countries, they turned that entire network to folks. They went in and removed Israeli settlers. They basically picked them up and said, nope, you're going back into this mainland. Now, once you do that, that means this piece of property is yours, Palestinian. There's water there, there's the Mediterranean, you have access to Egypt. But if you're going to come in and I'm constantly getting attacked from here, I'm going to build a wall and I don't want you to come. You stay there. I've given you everything. Do whatever you want with it. It is up to those individuals living in that piece of strip called, Gaza, to do whatever they want. They didn't like the Palestinian Authority. They got rid of them. They elected Hamas. And Hamas has used its money and its planning to conduct an operation like they did today. Look, if we are going to say there's two states here, and you're recognizing Gaza and the Palestinians as being part of a separate state in Israel, then when one nation or one state conducts an attack against another sovereign state, then that sovereign state has a right to fight and protect itself. Look, we are all going to be given an opportunity in our lifetime. It is the choices we make of what we decide to do with that opportunity. Again, one day it is possible that Jerusalem may not exist. Technology is getting so easy, so capable, that one individual with this mentality that I have to destroy Jerusalem, he may not be even an Islamic jihadist. He may show up with a suitcase 1,000 years from now, and it's game over. The whole place is gone. So either take what you got today and build and fix it and make it what it is, and do what some of the Arabs that live in Israel have done. They have been part of the government in the past. They've actually, the last election, they were a main voice. They are demographically getting larger numbers than the Israeli Jews are. So the reality is there's multiple ways of achieving what you think is this goal that you want to achieve. But if your goal at the end is that I have to get rid of everybody who's from this religious group, it's just not going to happen.
It's
The
not.
world
Yeah, it's
is
not
not going to
realistic.
allow. It's not realistic. Stick to realistic goals that you have that you could achieve. But if that's your ultimate goal, then don't be crying about the fact that somebody's fighting you. From my perspective,
Yeah,
if
it's
I
such a
am in
shame.
Congress,
Yeah.
if it is to the benefit of the United States to stay in the Middle East and put soldiers on the ground and sacrifice them, then I do that if it's benefit to the United States. If it's not, then I don't bother. United States has become really energy independent. Saudi Arabia has now lifted restrictions on women and is changing its culture, not because it wanted to, because it realized that in another 100 years, the fossil fuel energies that we use even today to work on our electric, to run our electric cars, may not be a requirement. There's other fuel sources that they may decide to do. They realize that we can't just rely on oil to being the main feeder for us. So they're changing. United States was in the Middle East because of oil. And if it doesn't need oil in the future, because with fracking, everything else, we have plenty of oils we can give on oil barrel to every American every month and still have a strategic reserve, then America's interest is not to be in the Middle East. It's not going to waste its time there. If it was to American interest the Russian interest to want to save the Armenians to where Armenians are, or even the Israelis, they would have done so. But Armenia is a landlocked nation that doesn't provide much, and the only place that provides anything is the Baku pipelines that sit in Azerbaijan. So guess where everybody's going to invest and spend their energies?
Azerbaijan. Yeah.
Azerbaijan. And tomorrow, when the Azerbaijan oil is not needed anymore, nobody's going to spend time with Azerbaijan. This is a
Yeah.
reality, and I keep on telling folks this, and they don't understand. The Palestinians, Gaza, have to provide something to the world that allows the world to say, I want to go and spend time in Gaza. Same thing in the West Bank.
Yeah. And, I mentioned that only because, and I compare it to the ISIS because an ISIS flag was left behind by Hamas terrorists in one of the small Israeli communities near Gaza called Kibbutzim. Hamas, ISIS, Hezbollah take note from one another, and that's why uh, when when ISIS invaded, and there it is, if we can show it one more time, when ISIS invaded Mosul, the whole world condemned it. And so when you have, um, you know, when you have siblings running around and taking notes from one another, and there it is. And it is, and it's such a shame, just like with the opportunities for the Palestinian people that were just and I have something that a writer just wrote that I'm going to read at the end of the program. It's so sad that the opportunities given and awarded to the Palestinians, the support, the compassion, everything coming from the world, all broken, all for naught. And you have a congresswoman in office that was voted in by her own constituents in Detroit, in Michigan, and has the opportunity to help the Palestinian people, but instead chooses to attack the people she wants to eliminate. And here you have a crime being committed that the whole world is coming together and saying, this is a crime that was being committed, and refuses to do that. I think it's such a shame that there is an opportunity being missed. And I also want to show this picture, and I want to get your last reaction to this before we leave. I know we've taken a lot of your time. Thank you so much for always being here. There was weapons that were left behind in Afghanistan, Colonel, that were found at the Gaza Strip. A report from the Wall Street Journal also claims that Iran, and you mentioned that earlier, that Hamas was planning this attack, and it had been planning it with Iran, and they met in Beirut, and you said they're currently meeting in Beirut. And it was weeks in, if not months, that they were planning for this attack, but probably not let Iran know, so that just in case it was forced out of them, but they were forced not to know. But what do you make about the weapons left in Afghanistan during the withdrawal, or the mess that happened in Afghanistan were found in Gaza?
I mean, of course, it was going to make it there. Eventually, that stuff can get sold and make it. But those are small caliber capabilities. But what you needed to knock out Israeli armor, more sophisticated, that had come from possibly Ukraine. So that's the issue. Look, we had weapons all the way from Vietnam War that made it from Vietnam to the southern border and be used by the cartels. They're still out there. Once you just can't. I had a platoon. As a platoon leader, we couldn't find. Sometimes we would go through an inventory on a weekly basis, if not monthly, and if we took the weapons out daily, and even then we'd be like, there's a weapon missing, who's got it, where's the paperwork? And of course we would find it. But imagine now you're transferring weapons to another nation, and then they're being lost or being taken by opposing forces that are killing the soldiers that have those weapons, and suddenly they make it through the black market and end up in the hands of Hamas to be used against Israeli armor. Look, this war isn't going to benefit either the Israelis or the Palestinians, individuals who believe themselves to be Palestinians in Gaza. And I will tell you, for those who are complaining that as congresswoman says that they live in apartheid state. Look, you don't like it, leave. Give that piece of land to the Assyrians. Trust me, we want a homeland. I'll take it.
We would
You
take
know,
it gladly.
seriously, you don't want it, I'll take it.
Ah,
I don't have
absolutely.
a problem with it. But you have to think about what you're saying. Again, if it is for U.S. interest overall to have and support the organizations like some of the American citizens are saying, in this case, it would be organizations that the Palestinians support, and one of them being Hamas or the Palestinian Authority, then okay, if it's to the U.S. interest, but there's nothing in the U.S. interest to support those organizations. So if you are
Mhm.
representing the United States, there's no interest. I am an Assyrian. I love my people. I have actually established a company. I've raised money. We've led force structures that fought in both Iraq and Syria against ISIS. But I tell my own people that there's absolutely no interest for the United States to invest in you right now. And the reason is not doing it because you're less than 1/10 of 1%. And until you can stand up on your own and get your act together and start understanding that you need to be at the geopolitical level, not at some Geba level, and you got to understand that you have to have leadership that can talk to whether you like it or not, President Xi of China, President Putin of Russia, President Biden in this case of the United States, the Prime Minister of Britain, the European Union leadership, the Netanyahu and the Saudi leadership, then you're useless to
You're
the
not
world
viable.
polities. You're not viable to world polities
You're
that are
not
doing it. So,
relevant.
so why do you want them to give you money? What do you want them to do for you?
Yeah.
Again, look what we did with what happened to the Kurds. The Kurds didn't understand how to lead nations. They did when Barzani came to the United States. He didn't mention anything about the rights of the minorities,
And they
all of
still
them.
don't. And
And
they
he
still
didn't.
don't.
Okay. And look what happened to him. And the world politics like, we cannot work with you. Guess what? Here's 51% of your territory gone. Thank you very much. Now go sit in your house and be quiet while your grandchildren are just doing nothing more than making money. Okay, they became billionaires. Congratulations. They
Mm.
don't and today you have the US envoy saying, yeah, do whatever you want with them. As Turkey is putting them on targeting bombing runs as they're hitting the northern areas. Unfortunately, a lot of them hide in Assyrian villages, and Turkey's bombing Assyrian villages. Look at the Armenians. They kept on looking in the past. Well, we're going to finally, after 100 years, we got a non binding resolution. And I've said it to you before, which is basically toilet paper. What happened after that? While they were working for getting a non binding resolution to recognize the first genocide of the 20th century, Turkey was arming itself. Azerbaijan was arming itself to take back its territory that Armenia had initially taken from it, Nagorno-Karabakh, and now it's in their hands. And Armenians are about to maybe lose a southern portion of their country because they weren't paying attention to the future. Palestinians, uh, you got to look for the future. And if the future is, well, I'm going to knock out the biggest, country that is here, in this case, Israel, and I'm going to call all this my own territory, you can't even get along. You have two. You have one portion that belongs to the Palestinian Authority, another portion that belongs to Hamas. You can't even get
Yeah,
your act together there.
coexisting.
You,
Coexisting comes to mind. If you cannot coexist, then
and,
there's no
and
longer
how
need.
and if you're going to be nothing more than just destroying that territory, who is it benefiting? For what
Yeah.
reason? Okay, you destroyed it. Guess what? Iranians are going to use you for their strategic interests. The Turks are going to use you for their strategic interests. And by the way, if Hezbollah starts firing rounds into Israel, Hezbollah basically runs the Lebanese government. Israel will bomb Lebanese targets. And some of those Lebanese targets are going to have Assyrian Christians in them, or in this
Yeah.
case, individuals who don't even consider themselves to be of Assyrian descent, Maronites. You're going to get your ass handed to you
Marinate.
too, because the nations of the world don't have time to decipher if this is the government that you're allowing to run you. then you're gonna die. So make a decision. Either change your governmental structures, get rid of these force structures, or if you're gonna support them, you're gonna finance them, you're gonna stand by them, you're gonna pay your tax to them, you're gonna give your kids and family members for them to be part of their ranks, then world policy is going to do what is to their interest. Period. That's
So
it.
with the world changing as it is, as you said, this is a global change. I mean, it's a new world order. Do you think Bibi Netanyahu, Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu, will survive this? I mean, it happened under his watch, and it all
That's a, that,
comes
that's
down
up to
to the
that
buck
is up to
stops with
the
him.
but that's up to the Israeli people. Again, um, he just formed a war cabinet. He Israel's at war, uh, and he's going to fight. Whether Israel is going to be there or not, 100 years from now, 200 years from now, is a different question. And again, like I
Mhm.
said, is always going to be targeted by Islamic radicals. That's the problem. Israel
Yep.
can tomorrow again drop nukes on Iran. Iran will be there in 75 years after eating two nukes. The problem is the target is always Jerusalem for these radicals. And
Yeah.
Jerusalem has Arabs in it, Christians in it, people from Thailand in it, people from South America in it, Americans in it, and guess what? They'll still come there and they will
Assyrians.
kill, yeah, Assyrians. And they, guess what? Open up a dirty bomb and that's it, it's gone. So
Yeah.
congratulations, you destroyed Jerusalem. Who wins? The Palestinian who is trying to bake bread somewhere in Gaza to make a living?
Yeah.
Uh, who wins in the process? Okay, you destroyed it. Okay, next. Where are you going
So
next? Let's
this
go
is
to
why
New
the
York.
controversy they're making this conflict such they're elevating it to a cause of a holy war, so that they can get the people's attention, so that they can get the involvement of the people, their passion, their children, sacrifice of life, blood being shed for causes that is really not of any religious purpose. No religion should be killing other people. Everyone wants to live in peace and harmony, but unfortunately, they're making it seem like he's your enemy. You need to perpetually hate that person and kill, kill, kill. And the communities of the world, like Iraq, like Syria, and now hopefully Palestine, will realize that terrorists at the helm of political power do nothing but destroy, just like we're seeing right now. And I do want to thank you, Lieutenant Colonel Sangari, for being on the program. You never you never say no to us. So we want to thank you very much. You are a wealth of information, militarily, geopolitically, just wisdom wise. Thank you. God bless you, keep you, God strengthen you, God give you long life, because there's not enough that we can say for all that you do for us on the program, for the community, for the American community, for the Assyrian community, for everyone involved. Thank you very much for being on the program today. And I want to thank you, and God bless you.
No, much appreciated, Mona. Look, I hope it works. I hope it helps. I got to tell you, I just think that unfortunately, even our leadership here doesn't understand that this was an unconventional warfare fight that was launched against the state of Israel. I know they keep on saying there's a terrorist group, a counterterrorism. No, it's the elected government of those Palestinians who elected it, who allowed that government to have an arm capability, and
Mhm.
that arm capability attacked the state of Israel, and now Israel's like, okay, game on, here we go. We're in and we're gonna fight. So I mean, it is war, one state against another state. Uh, Either it is a state or it's not. Our politicians have to figure that one out, and when they do,
Yeah.
then you can have a foreign policy approach that is much easier. Because as they say, is counterterrorism, but this doesn't fall into counterterrorism. It was unconventional war conducted through asymmetric operations between one group against a stronger power. It's happened in the past. It will happen in the future. The Chechens
Excellent.
did it to the Russians. The folks that came out of Saudi did it to United States, and Hamas that is funded and educated by Iran did it. And by the way, Iran's not the only one, the head of the snake, but I'll tell you, China is the backbone of Iran.
Oh yeah.
China, gives money and support for Iran. So wherever there's a Hamas fighter, there's a China policy there. Wherever there's an
Mhm.
Iranian, there's a China policy there. So hopefully it doesn't lead to a larger war or regional war. But as long as people are willing to kill each other, and they'll get used for the benefit of a reset of this global world, and we don't know how it's going to look for our people, for Assyrians. You got to
For the
understand
global
that,
world, really, for everyone.
yeah, you got to understand that you better get your act together. Otherwise, tomorrow you might be getting your villages bombed by the Turks because they have another
Yeah,
interest in the region.
exactly. Thank you, Rabbi. It's always wonderful to have you. Until I'll call you tomorrow. Hopefully, everything goes well for you, the family, us, the world, really, and the warning, taking the warning seriously, of course, and having precautions. So I'll talk to you, and thank you once again. But I do want to end the program today with something that I read earlier by a lady, and I don't want to, if you want to listen to this, Rabbi, it's really beautiful, by Yasmin Muhammad. She is actually. I wanna share two last thoughts. One full of pain and regret, and the other one with human compassion. Yasmin Mohammed is a Canadian university instructor and human rights activist and an author with Egyptian and Palestinian descent. She wrote an article called "My Lost Home," and I have to change glasses for this. My Lost Home, and she says, "My father lived his whole life with the hope that there might be a peaceful two-state solution. He spent his last year making YouTube videos on the topic and telling anyone who would listen about his family's olive groves in Gaza. I'm actually kind of relieved that he left this earth before he had to watch Hamas slaughter his dream on video for all the world to see. Hamas has ensured that there will be no more Palestine and no more hope for an independent state." How sad is that? People said uh, people sent messages to me asking, "Are you pro-Israel or pro-Palestine?" As if we are all watching a football match. "Are you wearing a blue jersey or a red jersey?" I'm wearing neither. I'm in black. I'm in mourning for the lost Israeli and Palestinian lives. I'm in mourning for the Palestinian that could have been, with a gorgeous waterfront overlooking the Mediterranean Sea that was recently made safe to swim in, with fertile soil and once sustained ancient olive groves, with land rich with resources for success. It also had the funding, generous government cooperation, nonprofits, and individuals that have been flooding the area with billions of dollars for decades. But instead of focusing on a potential tourist industry or building hospitals and schools and helping the Gazan people thrive on the land, the area was overrun by terrorists. It's so sad. The world knows Hamas now as terrorists who have committed depraved atrocities that would even make ISIS blush. But the people of Gaza already knew them. They have been suffering in relative silence under these monsters for years. Anytime Gazans dare to raise their voice in criticism, their throat is slit immediately, making it brutally obvious that it's best to keep quiet. Even those who hated Hamas chanted their allegiance to them loudly in fear of their lives and their families' lives. Reminds me of the Butcher of Baghdad. Again, I say, I'm in black, I'm in mourning for the lost Israelis and Palestinian lives. I never shared my father's optimism. I never could imagine the two states living side by side. The past 75 years have been delaying the inevitable. These two Abrahamic faith hate each other, and the only way there could ever have been hope is if both groups progress beyond their ancient books. But both sides did the opposite. Israel had been pulled further and further into the Orthodox right wing, and Gaza had become more and more extremist, electing terrorists to follow a literal interpretation of the ancient scriptures. And I'm going to end with this. I've never been to Gaza, she says. My children have never been to Gaza. Maybe my grandchildren might go one day and read a plaque on some ancient monument that described how this used to be the land of people who called themselves Palestinians. They had a rich culture, delicious food, beautiful, bright clothing. Now they do not have a home. Now they do not have a homeland anymore because they chose violence over peace. Despite the abundance of olive branches in Gaza, they chose to extend a knife instead. That is the voice or the viewpoint of pain. But I want to end it with a viewpoint of compassion, a human compassion of someone that is not involved in either. The thought that is of my middle son, Paul Oshana, who shared this on social media and said this: praying for peace in the world, plain and simple. Innocent people should never have to die under any circumstances. Ukraine, Israel, Russia, Gaza. My heart goes out to anyone affected by war, conflict. Rather than argue with each other who is right or wrong, we need to find common ground to bring us all together. Sorry for the rent. The whole situation hurts my heart. And those are the two thoughts I'd like to end this program with. I know it's easier said than done, but I do want to leave you with shlama, shalom, and salam. May you be blessed until the next time. And don't forget, tomorrow we are going to have Dr. Yaakov Moaz from Jerusalem, who is a Jewish Assyrian who was banished from the land of Mesopotamia, north of Iraq, that was known as the Assyrian Empire, who is going to be talking to us about his preservation or his efforts to preserve the Aramaic language. We will have a live report of the communities that are affected today. So Dr. Yaakov not only knows of what's going on today, but has history from what went on as history repeats itself. So once again, we leave you with Shlama. Thank you for tuning in. Please follow us, share the program, and subscribe to everything on Mona K Show and all social media. Thank you and be blessed.
America Fest. So we are very honored to be here. We're going to be covering it. It's a summit that's going to take place for the next 4 days.